Let's get to it. Patch 14.5. This has been overall, before we start, I want to say this has been a fantastic patch. It's one of my favorite patches in the past year. And actually has almost completely redeemed the set in terms of a fun perspective. I was not having fun the first 3 patches. And it felt like, if anything, it felt like it was getting worse. And I was like sort of losing hope for that. In fact, I actually prepped talking points, and I can actually even prove it. I actually prepped talking points about like me making a video, and I'll widen my webcam here to show you guys. But I had something called like my problems with set 14, right? And I had like a full-on thing. And I was ready to actually like do a full-on talk about it. But I did say one thing, which is I said I'm gonna hold out for one more patch and see how it feels before I can like decisively make this video. And I think they addressed a lot of issues that I actually had with it. But the number one thing was I just wasn't having fun. So let's see what happens here. I just as a spoiler alert ahead of time, they are going to shake up the meta a lot because this is the item rework patch. But I want to hear what Mort has to say. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Everybody, Riot Mort here, back with another patch rundown. Yes, I know we missed the Latch patch rundown, but we're back with another patch rundown.
Ooh, nice haircut,
patch
Mort.
TFT 14.5. Now,
how's the volume?
Meta-wise, we're actually in a really good spot. So, you know, lots of comps are doing well. There's lots of things that are successful. So overall, this is aiming to be a pretty small patch in terms of like champion and trait balance and things like that. Obviously, we don't want to shift things too much. We've seen the emergence of like a new Bastion Morgana comp that's on the rise, but overall, still a lot of things you can play. That being said, there is one big thing coming this patch that will sound like a lot, but we're hoping actually has very little impact as well.
Okay.
But it's something that we want to do. You can check out an article about this as well. But let's dive right into it. We're going to kick right off with the biggest thing that you can expect this patch. And that is that some of the items, I believe about 6 of them, are getting reworked slightly. Now, this rework is actually to kind of get us ready for the next set. There are some things coming in the next set that we want to get the item system sort of in a better spot for. But overall, like I said, hopefully the impact of these isn't that big. So let's talk, for example,
Set 15 confirmed
is going to become Striker's Flail. And overall, same stats, although no AP anymore. So this will help it be a little bit more of a universal item. It's got attack speed, crit, damage amp, and health. And then every time you critically strike, whether it be an auto attack or a spell, you'll gain 5% damage amp, stacking up to 4 times. So the maximum here is actually a little bit more damage amp than it was before as well.
Okay.
But overall, this should make it a little less, I have to hope they cast a shield, and I have to hope they AoE and proc that shield. And now it can just be good damage amp if you build crit. Should pair really well with IE, Jeweled Gauntlet, Executioner, stuff like that. So again, you'll build it in a lot of the exact same places you were before. Should barely notice the change. Should be a little bit better on AD champions. Good stuff. Ginsu's. This is the biggest change, if you will. I already put out a video on this that kind of shows the difference before and after. But overall, you should feel pretty comfortable still building Ginsu's like you did before. The only difference now is it's not going to hyper synergize with people who already have really high attack speed or proc on attack, things like Zeri or Jinx or Vayne. And it should be a little bit better on people who like have to stop and cast their spell or have a lower base attack speed. So like Senna benefits, Aphelios benefits, even Jinx to some extent. And so my expectation is for Ginsu's is that actually we'll see it built a little bit more, but usually only 1 and not 2. But take a look and let us know what you think. Next up is Spirit Visage. This is replacing Redemption. Redemption was a weird supporty item that actually healed both the wearer and the people around it. And again, we're trying to make our core item system mostly selfish stuff. So the big buff here is that Redemption didn't give you any durability for the first 5 seconds until it procced once. Now you just get that 10% durability up front. So that's going to last the same. And then you're going to regenerate health every second rather than every 5 seconds, which means you'll actually not miss out on value, which is usually a good thing. And it also gains a little bit of health. Overall, it's a tiny nerf to the item because, again, you're not getting that AoE heal. But selfishly, it should be a small bit better. This is one that my shot call is it'll be a tiny, like, neutral. It's not going to, like, wow anybody. But overall, it's what we want it to be. And if we have to buff it, we will. But, yeah, this should be good on people like Cho'Gath, 3-star Braum, etc.
Mundo.
All right, Kraken's Fury. This is probably the biggest change of all the items. as far as like completely different function. Like this one is a very different function. Hurricane was all about having really high base AD and then shooting extra bolts off that kind of just fed people mana or really didn't kill anyone. And so that's completely gone. Now the item is actually about gaining stacking AD. So it's kind of like the Archangels of AD, except instead of over time, it's on auto attack, which does synergize with doing lots of auto attacks.
Yeah.
So there's one really good user this set, which is Zeri. Zeri should be pretty good with this item, especially over time.
Okay.
But overall, actually, a lot of the users you would expect to be good in this set, people like Vayne or Aphelios, already have a bunch of AD from their traits. So like Marksman gives AD, Slayer gives AD. Kog'Maw's another one that can use this kind of well. But overall, I actually expect this to be kind of built a little low. Now, I know when Dishsoap looked at these, he thought this was very, very strong. So we'll see if that ends up being correct. But overall, this is, again, an item that's meant to be sort of a stacking, over time so that by the end of the fight, you're doing a lot of damage. Zeri kind of being the big user of this.
That was actually in context before he saw the Ginsu's Rage Blade change. He thought that this was insane because you could still build the old Rage Blade. But if assuming Mordog is correct, where it's power neutral, then it should still be a good synergy based off that understanding, because you're able to get Rage Blade and Kraken's Fury, and theoretically that could be really good on Zeri. And I'm kind of sad that they took out Redemption. There's sort of a trend that's going on in itemization for TFT where support items and just support things just have fewer and fewer. There's just like fewer access to that. And it's becoming more about like, well, everyone can carry and all the power is concentrated. It's like much more selfish. And that actually makes it, I think some people actually really enjoyed like support oriented gameplay, support units, support items, I mean, I guess you can pick support augments, support traits. So it's a little bit disappointing, but I think it's understandable because Redemption does have some elements of it that are like problematic because Redemption has been really broken in some situations. But we'll see. I think it's just more boring. I think the one thing. Oh wait, I think he still has item changes coming. Oh, maybe I should let him finish before I give overall item commentary. Sorry.
All right, Void Staff. This is Static Shiv was this really weird item that like you kind of felt bad putting on your main carry. It always felt like you knew you were missing out on damage, but you always needed it. And it had this whole like do extra 30 damage that had this really cool fantasy of like, if I have a lot of attack speed, I can do Pikachu builds. But we've had to move away from that. And so we'll talk about Shiv a little later. But we wanted to get Void Staff to be an item that can provide that shred while also not feeling like crap to put on your main carry. And so overall, it's very similar. It's got some more AP, so you lose the proc, and then it shreds. So pretty simple here. My expectation is that you still won't see this on a lot of main carries. It's almost going to get played exactly the same as before, right? Like if you're playing a brand comp, Ziggs will have this. That'll be pretty common. But you're not going to see a lot of, main carries with it, but it won't feel bad if you have to, right? And so if you end up with like a brand that has Shojin, JG, and this, it's going to be okay, and so that's kind of the idea here. Okay. Lastly is Sterix Gauge. This one got a very slight change. When it procced before, you would get like some health and AD. And we took a look at this item, and if you saw the preview actually had it with Omnivamp, but we've taken that out because we found with the Omnivamp it just became a little too similar to Bloodthirster. So when we looked at Sterix Gauge and Bloodthirster, what we decided is that Bloodthirster is the slightly more defensive option where you can like heal infinitely, but it'll give you less offensive power. Sterix Gauge is the like, I've already got the healing covered somewhere else. I want lots of offensive power, but still survivability. So 40 base AD, which is really good for a melee champion. So this is going to be good on someone like a melee Renekton, for example. And then 300 health. And then at 60% health, you're going to get a giant shield that's essentially going to keep you alive for a good amount of time. It will decay over 6 seconds, but it's a bigger shield than Bloodthirster. And so again, you're not going to get the Omnivamp, but you're going to get more offensive power and more survivability. So if you've got like a melee glass cannon, maybe someone like a Graves after he gets some buffs, could be good in this set. But
maybe Zed.
This should be a melee item that should help in the future and have a little bit clearer role than it did in the past. Now, with these changes, we also may add some new artifacts.
So many item changes.
First off is because Spirit Visage is now a core item, we removed Anima Visage from the artifact system. But we did feel like we wanted to replace it with a new tank item. And so now we have the Indomitable. Now, if you remember from the anomaly in the previous set, there was that really cool one where you didn't move and you could pull people towards them. This is similar. You get 400 health, 20 armor and MR, and then you also gain 10% max health on top of that. So a lot of health, stun immunity, so you can't be stunned, very good. And then you always pull your current target into melee range, which is neat. Now, the anomaly locked you in place and created some pretty silly shenanigans where you would just put them in the back line. We did kind of want to remove a little bit of those. I'll call them Leduc shenanigans. And so the character can still move just very slowly. So there you go. It's pretty fun, though. I think it's going to be pretty powerful.
Probably funnier if it can't move.
Flicker Blade. If you're somebody who's like, no, I get the Ginsu's thing. I get your logic. But like the old Ginsu's was where it was at. Flicker Blade is the old Ginsu's essentially, except even more powerful. It starts with 15% attack speed instead of 10. Ginsu's used to give 5 attack speed per auto. This gives 8, so it will ramp up even quicker. And every 5 attacks also grant 4 AD and 5 AP. So this thing can ramp up. If you have a ramping fantasy, this is your item. I think this is going to be one that you're going to pick on 2-1 if you see it, and you're going to know what you're building and have some pretty powerful highs, even higher than the old Ginsu's before. Should be fun.
Flicker.
All right, Static Shiv. Static Shiv, as I mentioned, back in the day, had this really cool fantasy, right? Pikachu Zaya builds in set 3, where if you had a bunch of attack speed, you could like shock down the entire enemy team, and it was kind of fun. But because we kept moving away from that to make it a more flexible item, we lost that. We lost that spark. And as I've said before, artifacts are where we're supposed to have these sharp, unique fantasies. And so Pikachu Shiv is back. This item is focused entirely on if you have a lot of attack speed, you're going to do a lot of damage. And so every third attack, we'll deal 30 plus 40% of the holder's bonus ability power as additional damage. And so if you build like this plus Ginsu's, which has some AP on something like a set 13 Kog'Maw, for example, this thing's going to be sparking and it's going to be hitting pretty hard. This set, I think Twisted Fate is going to be the best user of this. You know, Ginsu's Static Shiv, Twisted Fate can do some silly stuff. But yeah, should be pretty cool. And then lastly is Titanic Hydra. Don't let this item fool you. This one's tricky, and a lot of people didn't quite see this right. This item says 300 health, 15 AD, 15 attack speed. So it's definitely an offensive item on someone like Renekton, for example. Pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Attacks deal 3% of the holder's max health plus 8% of their AD as bonus physical damage to the target and adjacent enemies. Now, when a lot of people see this item, they're like, "Ooh, big health people, right? Like, I'm going to put this on my Dr. Mundos or your Cho'Gaths." That's true, but the thing to remember is there's a certain class of champion that has very high AD and high health. 3-star range champions. The biggest one here is Senna. This item is amazing on Senna. 3-star Vayne also can do some pretty insane stuff with this, with Slayer going. But because it's getting percentage of their AD, not just their health, and 3-star units generally have very high health pools, you can do some cool stuff with this. So be on the lookout for that. But like I said, this item cleaves pretty hard and can do a lot of damage. When I first ran Sims with this, with the numbers that they gave me that are in that article, and I saw it put it on Senna, it was like, oh, nearly. So let us know what you think. But yeah.
Let us know what you think. Oh, wow. Okay. And they still haven't
All right, a couple other changes. As I mentioned, Anima Visage is removed. No problem. Lichbane. Lichbane's been kind of underperforming for a while. And like, we have a bunch of blue buff users in this set that don't want Lichbane. That's weird. Like, the entire purpose was like a blue buff. Like, the fact that Yumi doesn't want this item really, that's not great. So Lichbane is supposed to be like, I cast a bunch and then big proc. So Lichbane's getting buffed. Mogul's Mail has been underperforming a bit, so that's also getting a small buff here from 7 to 10 HP per stack. Okay, Wit's End. This buff might be confusing, but you'll notice it's gaining 300 HP and 30 armor.
Whoa.
The challenge was, when we looked at Static Shiv, which is about being on a ranged champion like Kog'Maw in the back and doing a bunch of procs, and then Wit's End, it's like they're kind of similar. They kind of have the very same similar space where it's like high attack speed and then damage on hit. So what we decided to do is that Static Shiv is the better ranged version, right? If you have your Pikachu Zayas or your Twisted Fates or your Kog'Maws, Static Shiv is going to be the better item. Wit's End is now designed to be on your melee bruisers that want to attack fast. And so the best example in this set would be Kobuko. Kobuko should love this item, right? Because he's going to get 300 HP,
Okay.
30 armor, 30 MR, the
Okay.
attack speed, and that Omni Vamp that he's getting from the thing, as well as
Okay.
the on-hit damage. And so that should be the difference. That's going to be the core design here. Wits End on a backliner won't be as good because you'll kind of be wasting some of his defensive stats. It won't be quite as much damage as Static Shiv. I think it could still work, but that's kind of the intention, and that's why this is getting those stats.
Viego,
Finally,
yeah, Viego could
on the
be
support
easy
item
too.
side, again, some of this is getting ready for the next set, but Spite has been underperforming for a while. No one's excited to get Spite. And so rather than have Spite be this awkward low roll, we're just going to get rid of it for now so that you can't low roll and you don't feel like you just have a bad support item. So
What about my
there you
Zac combos?
item changes first this patch, like I said, decent chunk of them. But overall, the actual impact to the meta, like if you're somebody who's like, okay, but what does this do to change the meta? It should do very little. That is the goal. And in fact, one of our other big goals for this was like, if somebody didn't read the patch notes and they just start playing the game, they'll barely notice, right? They'll
you
build
guys.
Static Shiv when they thought, and they'll get a Void Staff, but it'll do the same thing. They'll build Ginsu's, and it'll be pretty dang similar. So that's kind of the hope. Let us know how that lands. But yeah.
Nah, come on, Mort. All the TFT players read the patch notes. Wow. Okay, so that was like 10 minutes of just straight. Because the thing is, I wanted to see all the item changes in totality before dropping commentary. So picking up where I was last talking about is that one thing about itemization is that they're making a lot of the changes make sense. I think Guard Breaker having to proc on shields, and it's not exactly something intuitive. Actually, this patch is, funny enough, has been the best Guard Breaker has felt because there's like a visual light up indicator. I don't know if you guys seen this, but they look like they're summoning like white orbs around their wrists whenever they're like that. That's a Guard Breaker visual activation of it. That's been the most clear it's been that like Guard Breaker is working. And so I think they're just reworking it to make it more consistent. Also, Guard Breaker is now like just a crit amplifying item, so it just makes sense. We've already talked about the Rage Blade change. I think people's main thing was that Rage Blade, they're worried about Rage Blade's identity making it less fun. But I'm telling you, if you watch the video that I was like showing you guys, the visual of it, in case you haven't seen it, is that the big number still goes up, but Mort did like a side-by-side DPS calculation. And he was saying that the performance is about the same, but it's like a lot of the performance is like evaluated around like late parts of the fight. Like he's saying like, oh, like it starts to break even or like starts to climb ahead at 20 seconds into the fight. So it's like kind of hard to parse because that's not usually how you evaluate Rage Blade. You're not really evaluating Rage Blade like 20 seconds into a fight. But I do see what they're saying. And I think one of the things is that it's such a big overall rework that I don't know how to evaluate if Rage Blade is good or not. I think it's probably going to be fine. It's also better on units that he was talking about Senna as an example for Hydra, which is just hilarious that they made Hydra an actual item now in TFT. But he said that it should be better on units like Senna. I think Rage Blade should be better on Senna as well. So theoretically, what Rage Blade does is it's better for not just the attack speed carries like a feel, or it's the same for the attack speed carries like a Felix and Zaya on Zeri on paper. But it should open up more itemization. Like you could put Rage Blade on AD and AP casters as well. Like it should theoretically be more units that can use Rage Blade. Because as you guys know, Rage Blade is mainly an early game item. People are usually not building it late game because fights aren't really worthwhile. But if you are stuck with Rage Blade, it feels like maybe you should have more holders, which is a good thing, I think. I don't really know the thing about Crown Sphere. I think it sounds really broken on champions that want it, but I feel like it's still going to be really narrow. I feel like not a lot of champions actually want this. It's like one of those things where like it's just built for attack speed carries and nobody else, which I guess is what Ruin's Hurricane was to a certain extent if you had a lot of high AD. Actually, not really. Hurricane was just purely about high AD, not really about attack speed. But I do think that it's just interesting that we have new items. I disagree that like he thinks that it's not going to his assessment is that's going to be low impact. I'm pretty sure a lot of this stuff is going to have major impact. Items are one of the core ways you interact with TFT. So I would be very surprised if this doesn't have a big impact, like profound impact. And then you combo with the fact that right now we're in an item recession where like items are just hard to come by. And so it's just hard not to feel like this won't have some of the most impact potentially of the set. I understand like the intent of what they're trying to do, but I feel like it's going to have a big impact. And then kind of going back to what I was saying before as well, which is items also feel very similar, and it feels like it feels like to make items feel more uniform and easier to play and like more logical, it feels like they lose some of their uniqueness. So like Static Shiv is a really unique item that's pretty cool. It's like, you know, and they're making that an artifact and they're sort of changing the identity. And now it's like, well, this is just Last Whisper, but for AP. And then, you know, they made a couple of comparisons like Deathblade and Deathcap are just like the exact mirrors of each other. And so now it just feels like items are sort of losing some of their edge of what makes them very interesting and unique. And I understand that's like part of it is to make it the gameplay feel more like smooth and logical. But I do think that's like one thing that's a little bit sad. It's a trade-off, right? It's not just a pure upside and downside. It does feel like we're losing a little bit of those uniqueness. And that kind of goes to some of the other things like Redemption and whatnot, because Redemption's a unique support item. And there's not many support items in the game. You can't really like this nerfs quality over quantity like a lot, I think. Like Radiant Redemption is something that you can like have team win conditions as opposed to solo carries. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't know what to think about the Status Gauge change. I think this item doesn't really belong in the set, so to speak. Like I don't think there's nothing that leaps out to mind that makes it good. Maybe maybe there's something really good with some of these crazy high HP builds like Mundo. But as far as I know, I don't really think of anything much about Status Gauge. It does give a lot of AD though. 40 AD is like a lot. So maybe there's something there. But as far as I know, it doesn't feel like it really does anything. Stark's been fine. The set just has 0 viable users. I mean, it's good on Renekton. It's situationally pretty good on a couple of other units. But yeah, generally speaking, like it's mainly been combo fodder for Suspicious Trenchcoat. That's basically what its main function is. New artifacts. I mean, new artifacts. I think most people have kind of understand that artifacts keep itemization options and augments really interesting. This makes Living Forge and Portable Forge even more fascinating. Indomitable there's probably something broken about this for sure. Like these kinds of like, okay, there's stun immunity and they pull targets into melee range and all these things that shifts rules about champions. There's probably something kind of crazy, but it's a really fun concept. I like that. And yeah, I guess like Flickerblade does sound like it could be a really powerful item. This is like Anger Issues, the augment. If you remember like Anger Issues, the Rageblade prismatic augment. This is basically that an item. And I'm sure there's basically going to be some Flickerblade 2-1 commit to this unit, and it's going to be insane. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be a problematic item. People tend to break the game with this kind of stuff. So my prediction is that Flickerblade is probably most likely the item that goes crazy. But maybe it's terrible. Who knows? It's hard to predict, right? It's hard to predict. I don't think Static Shiv is good, but it's just one of those things where you have to test it out. So my prediction is that it just kind of falls off, but maybe the fact that it gives holders bonus ability powers additional magic damage, maybe that's actually insane. Like it could be really good early game and it just like gives you a guaranteed top 4 because it just does so much flat damage early game that it just like snowballs. I have no clue. I have yet to even play it. I played a couple games on PBE, never even saw this one time, so it's hard to say. They also buff Lichbane. This is actually good. Lichbane is not very good. All these buffs make sense. Or rather, Lichbane and Mogul's Mail makes sense. Wit's End on Kabuko and Viego. I don't feel like I would still put that, but 300 HP is a lot. That's like that's more than that's basically like the implant, like consumable size, right? It's a lot of stats. So maybe this just becomes overstated. Maybe Wit's End just an overstated item now, and you just take it because you play Wit's End early game and then you just move it on a bunch of different melee units, and now Wit's End all of a sudden there's just way too much stats. It could be just overstated now. 300 HP is like a huge amount. And Spite, I mean, I guess Spite on Zack's the only combo, right? Who cares? I don't think, is anybody here legitimately really sad about Spite being removed? I don't think so, right? I think the most disappointing thing is that it felt like it could be cool, but it's not. But I don't think anyone really is going to miss this. Not a single person.
Is that Static Shiv is the better ranged version.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Am I missing anything? I feel like that mostly covers it. Titanic Hydra, I mean, yeah, like I could see it on 3-star range units, but I'm pretty sure unless Mundo, if it ships as it is, it does sound pretty crazy with Mundo because he does have Slayer, he does have HP. It does sound like it's potentially pretty good. We'll just have to find out. Super hard to predict. Super hard to predict.
First off is the 2-star 2-cost opener. We tried it. We had some fun with it. We figured out, if it was going to be good or not. Overall, the answer is we didn't think it landed as well as we'd hoped.
Yes.
And so we're just disabling it. We're turning it off. Awesome. The impact of having a start that was different than somebody else was just more than I think we were comfortable with. Even at a casual level, it's just like if you got a 2-star 2-cost you weren't comfortable with and you felt like you had to play it, but if you sold it, it felt bad. So we're going to disable this one. To split or not to split. We actually like this encounter. It's a fine encounter, but unfortunately there's a couple bugs with it. And we couldn't get the bugs fixed in time for this patch. So rather than just leave it buggy, we decided to disable it for now. We may fix it, we may not, to be honest with you. We're kind of getting ready for the next set. But if we do, cool, we'll re-enable it. But it's not a bad encounter by any means. Obviously, because we disabled some, we had to put percentages back in others. So 4th augment is going to go up a bit at all levels. Invested, this is the one where there's a pool and you either choose to increase it or cash out. That one's going up a little bit. Prismatic Opener, Prismatic Finale, and Crab Rave. All of those going up ever so slightly just to, again, get it back up to 100% to take up all the ones we took out. So not a big deal. Last small change here is that the Golem Armory, if you take the tank one, which is pretty much the most popular choice, although a lot of people liking the new RNG Golem, so we're really glad that landed well. But their Anima Visage is now an Indomitable. So if anything, I think this is a slight buff. But we'll see. We'll see. So tank golem now can grab people. Neat.
I mean that there's probably some tech there. That actually sounds like a pretty big buff. Because the Indomitable, what does the Indomitable do again? It just it hooks somebody, right? Pulls the current target into melee range. That sounds like melee unit. Okay, it sounds like that's gonna grief a bunch of melee units. Like let's say you're with Zed. And then, your Zed is about to do something, and then he just instead of teleporting, he just gets grabbed by the golem. Oh man, that sounds like tank golem's gonna be crazy. Or you can pull the tank to their side. Yes, exactly. Your solo frontline. Let's say your solo frontline on Leona. Let me pull up TFT Academy here. Let's say you're playing Anima Squad, right? And you're positioned like this. Oh wait, actually, I think we changed that. Is there a solo frontline comp that we have right now? But let's say you're playing solo frontline of any kind, and then they just yoink it to one side and they wrap you. That sounds. I'm not sure. This is. I think they think it's not going to be high impact. Maybe it isn't. I haven't actually seen the item, but it does sound like it has some very crazy use cases, and I can't imagine. Well, I guess if everyone has a tank golem, maybe it balances that way. If everyone just picks tank golem. Sounds like a good counter to anti-Sejuani positioning. Yeah, potentially. I think this is going to be one of the more interesting yet clowny yet potentially skill expressive. I think positioning nuances like this is really hard for a lot of players. So, yeah, there's going to be some big plays. It's going to feel really cheesy at times though. Oh man. This is good. This was super buggy. Basically, I don't know if you guys saw it play on this one, but sometime in stage 4 or 5, it just starts to not work, and then you just get 10 gold. Like you literally have no choice. You just click gain 10 gold. Like okay, cool, boring, / bugged. And I actually think these 4th augments encounter increases is nice. That just means fewer. This is actually a nerf to trainer golems. This is a nerf to Prismatic Party. This is a nerf to Scuttle Puddle because they're just increasing the chances that you see this. And these are pretty neutral, actually. This is yes, there's technically more augments in the game, but it does feel like not that bad because it feels like you always can use these augment choices to make higher impact plays as opposed to well, here are 3 emblems on your golem and you have to just make the best with it. So overall, from a competitive player perspective, I think this is good.
But we'll see.
All right, let's go ahead and fast forward.
It's a really interesting comp where it's you have to kind of hit it in the right spot, and it can do really well. It performs pretty decently. The one part we really didn't like where it was doing well, though, was like the early game, the 3-piece. It's like if you have a 3-piece anima start, it just didn't quite have the oomph we were hoping for. If you get like a 5 anima very quickly, then from there it goes crazy and you're good to go. So the 3-piece weapons are each going to do about 10% more damage. This will last, like, so if you're playing 7, when the 3-piece weapons fire, they are doing 10% more damage. So this is a buff to anima overall.
Yeah.
So it is a very small buff, but that part of the kit will be doing a little bit more.
Okay.
Again, should be really minor and mostly focused on the early game. Amp is doing pretty well. I think, when we prepared the patch, things like Nefuri and Amp were popping off pretty hard. I think overall they're like in an okay spot. So this nerf may not have been necessary overall, but for now, 5 Amp is just such a big spike over 4 Amp that we felt like we liked the damage part of it being amped up. That's good, but the HP just felt like a little much. So we're taking 100 HP off of 5 Amp. Shouldn't be too noticeable.
I just want to say something. Yesterday, I was watching a scrim from 100 Thieves. He was playing Nefiri 1, Nidalee 1, Nico 1 as his front line with 5 Amp, and he was winning almost all of his fights on stage 4. His front line was 7 gold. His front line was 7 gold. It was unbelievable, and he was winning like most of his fights because he had 5 Amp and Samira. Yeah. It was way too tanky. In fact, I definitely think that 5 Amp absolutely need to get nerfed. It's very good. It's very good when you hit and not that good when you don't hit, which I think balances out in the numbers. But the performance delta is just so massive that I think they definitely need to make, because the difference between hitting it on your beginning of your roll down on stage 4 and missing, everyone knows, right? It's like there's like a meme of like when you hit Samir on your 8 on level 7, level 8, you won the game, and it's partially because of how big that gap is. And thankfully, nerfing the HP, I think is correct. The damage should feel impactful, but it was just way too tanky. I can't believe how stable he was on just like 1-star amp. It was unbelievable.
6 Boombot, same thing, overperforming ever so slightly. I mean, it should. It's a hard to hit comp, but just a little bit. So very tiny nerf here to just 6 Boombot. 7 Exotech. This is a comp that, unfortunately, of all of our verticals right now, like Street Demon's pretty playable, Anima's pretty playable. Exotech 3 and 5 are very useful, but 7, not so much. You don't really see a lot of 7 Exotech. So we're going to give that a little bit more attack speed per item and some more health to make Exotech a little bit better. Rapid Fire. I think this is another debatable nerf. Obviously, long Renekton is kind of the thing that really succeeds here, which is known, but we do have to balance around that. And 6 Rapid Fire was always something that we had over-buffed to get people to try it. It's like, whenever a comp doesn't work, you can bribe enough people with power, and then they'll optimize it and figure out, and it's like, okay, now that's been optimized, here's the approximate level it should be. So we are giving 6 Rapid Fire a very tiny nerf. I do understand that this is pretty tied to Renekton, but it kind of makes sense because 6 Rapid Fire is usually an emblem anyway, and so you're usually going to play Renekton, and that's just the way it is. So Techie, another example where Techies are close. They're not bad by any means, but we just want to make sure that 6 and 8 Techie are options that you can play. And so 6 is going to get 5 more AP, 7's going to get, or 8's going to get 10 more AP. Small buffs.
Okay, so Boombot getting nerfed. I mean, Boombot, this actually makes the Urgot Fast 9 even harder to pull off now. That comp's already really difficult to deal with, difficult to get to. So I don't know if this ends up making it so like it's just like you can't really play this comp unless you're literally in Scuttle Puddle and you have like the God Start. It's a little bit sad. I think Boombot is actually one of the cooler traits this set. So I do think 6 Boombot is OP. I think anyone who's played it knows, but I do think it's a little sad. Exotech, I'm pretty sure the reason why 7 Exotech sucks is because Zeri can't solo carry. And so I think like this should, I guess, help that aspect of it, because when you play Zeri, I guess you're supposed to Zeri and Varus duo carry with 7 Exo, or you just play one other. Yeah, but like overall, 7 Exotech has not been very impressive. So I guess this helps it. But it does put a heavy emphasis on Zeri solo carrying, which she can't currently, but maybe with the item rework, you never know. Rapid Fire definitely deserves it. 6 Rapid Fire Renekton is way too good. Way too good. But Rapid Fire itself is also really good. There's been people who play Rapid Fire and they don't hit Renekton, but they're really stable because they hit Zeri too, and just 6 Rapid Fire giving way too much stats. And so they just play like Aphelios 2, they play Zed 2, and 6 Rapid Fire still is like very solid because it's just overstated in general. So it says it's 2%, but it's 2% per stack, which kind of adds up over each of the stacks. I think Rapid Fire can stack up to 10 times or something like that. Wait, I need to check that. But it is a lot of attack speed that nerfs their ability to stabilize without Renekton. All right, and then Techie getting buffed. It's good. They're just doing it every patch. I think Techie has gotten buffed like every patch. I'm pretty sure vertical Techie's gotten buffed every patch, and I'm wondering what the number is, right? Like this vertical sorcerer, vertical mage, vertical Techie, it's gotten buffed every patch since the beginning. So yeah, surely this time vertical Techies will be really good. It's a ton of stats. Eventually it's going to be like, well, now I play Veigar 2, Zyra 2, Seraphine 2, and now I just kill everything. But yeah, we'll see.
That's it on the trait side. So like I said, not a lot changing. On the champion side, Nitro is just underperforming a little bit, which, again, I know that's crazy because there are definitely some good Nitro games out there, but overall it's just a little too hard to play. And so we're going to focus on giving Kindred a little bit more AD so that you can play her a little bit more in the early game. We're also hoping this helps like an early marksman combo or an early rapid fire combo and make Kindred feel like a little bit more useful in the comp. So 2 more AD. Again, 2 AD is so tiny. And then only 3-star spell buffs so that if you actually invest in her at 3-star, it feels good. And then Amp was we talk about Amp and how it caps out well, but Amp's early game is pretty rough. And Nidalee is a champion that like very few people are ever excited to itemize her. So we're giving her a 10% spell buff. Now, the thing to note here is this is only the core spell, not the chain lightning. So it's not even a 10% buff to all of her damage. It's just that like initial bite on the primary target. So overall, it's a smaller nerf than it looks like, or smaller buff than it looks like. But Nidalee should be a little bit better. And so these two things hopefully will help Nitro comps and early Amp comps and things like that in the early game.
I just want to say one thing is that I think people don't put items on Nidalee when they should be. Like a lot of people would rather itemize Shyvana 1 than Nidalee 2. And I think that's actually a pretty big mistake. I think in these like setups, part of the reason why they're struggling is because they're literally just not putting items on Nidalee. I think Nidalee is fine. And I think it's like you should be putting items on Nidalee instead. So that's partially why I think it's performing so badly, because people are just like playing it wrong. But I don't know if that necessarily means that this buff is like bad per se. It's just I just think that she didn't need it, in my opinion, just because people are like, oh, like Shyvana's a tank, Nidalee's like a melee carry. I'm just not gonna put items on Nidalee. She's actually fine. Kindred sucks for sure. But this makes the Kog'Maw Kindred opener even more insane. Actually, I think he's going to nerf Kog'Maw, right? Let me see. So let me hold off on that. Let me look at the other one costs.
Nitro comps and early. We went through, and there were just a few 3 stars that were underperforming, Kog'Maw. And people don't really seem to be that excited to hit. And in addition, that also buffs their 4-star version. So if you ever get them with like worth the wait or something. So Alistar, Kog'Maw, Vi, and Seraphine are all getting buffs at 3-star. Alistar, it's like a little bit less flat damage reduction. You'll barely notice this. Kog'Maw is going to get a little bit more spell AD when he transforms. Vi is going to get a little bit bigger of a shield. And Seraphine is just going to do a very small amount of damage here. And you can see 585 to 600. That's only 15. That's, again, so minor. We're not looking to swing hard here, but it just little touch. All right.
Okay. I thought they were gonna nerf Kog'Maw because he's like way too good early game. Kog'Maw openers are like insane. If you haven't caught on by now, you have no excuse not to know. Kog'Maw openers are like the best in the game, alongside like Morgana 2 openers, which are really high roll. And I thought that he was gonna get a little bit of a tap because he's like overwhelmingly dominant early game. I've seen Kog'Maw 2 like play stage 2 and stage 3 and like overwhelm stuff. And he's the primary vehicle of whether or not you can get into the AD. And so I thought that they were going to like take down the early game power of Kog'Maw if they want to buff the 3-star version. Also, I don't even think 3-star Kog'Maw reroll is like that bad. I think it's just that very situational. I don't know if you guys have seen any of the Kog'Maw reroll stuff, but when you can play it, it's pretty good. I think Kog'Maw reroll is actually a real line. So yeah, I think another thing about this is that it's gonna be like it wouldn't surprise. Okay, so and like I think Mort is right. I think he's right that the buffs to Alistar and Seraphine aren't that like that crazy. I do think it's correct that it's
Hard
a bit
here.
small. Sorry, but it's like encouraging a 1-cost reroll meta. That's what it is, because all the and it's happening right now in your lobbies where because 1-cost rerolls are just performing well. It's just going to encourage other people to 1-cost reroll, and then it kind of creates this like very it just has this domino effect where everyone's hitting their 1-cost really quickly, and it's going to suffocate the lobby tempo because everyone's pressuring so hard due to the 1-cost reroll being super dominant. And then it's going to be like one of those things where, like, yes, individually none of these 1-cost rerolls are going to have a high win rate, but they're just pressuring all the 4-costs out of the meta. That's sort of the tipping point that we already are arguably starting to encroach on. Like, I think everyone caught on that Morgana reroll is really good. And so now you're having like a bunch of people who are doing that. I think people already know that Nitro is actually pretty playable now. And in fact, it's like probably this it's like competing with Gorilla, like Mundo reroll as like a really good reroll. So I challenge Frodan to go some Cog 3 games. Oh, the thing is, Mort, I think you're supposed to play Kog'Maw 3 with specific augments. I can talk about those augments, but I don't want to give away 4v4 edge. So I'll tell you all about it in 1 week from now. I'm trying not to leak the tech, but there are definitely moments you can play Kog'Maw reroll, and I'm not gonna talk about that very much. But if it's like, but I think what is correct though, I think he's saying like, if I play Kog'Maw 3 just because I have copies of Kog'Maw, that's not a Kog'Maw game. That part I can agree with. The vibe buffs here, I guess this buffs. Does this impact her hero augment? I'm not sure actually. If it impacts her hero augment, that is pretty good. I've seen some really good Vi rerolls. We saw it in EU actually. We saw Cease and Desist Vi almost win out with 5 Cypher. So if it does work with her hero augment, that's pretty good.
That's only 15. That's, again,
also, Greg, you want to come on the coaching?
We're not looking to swing hard here, but it just little touch. All right, 2-cost side. This is probably where the biggest batch of changes are. Graves is, I think, good. Right now I would call him the worst champ in the set after stage 2. Very playable stage 2. Love him in stage 2. Quite good. Falls off kind of off a cliff though. So what we're going to do is we're going to give him 5 more AD. Now this will make him better in stage 2, so watch out. He'll be a monster. And if you 3-star him, he'll do a little bit more damage. I'll be honest with you, I don't think this moves the needle enough, but we got to go light here. You never know sometimes, and we don't want to like all of a sudden have Graves in every early game dominating everything. So Graves is going to get a bit of a buff paired with a few other things later. LeBlanc, kind of similar. There's like one LeBlanc comp that works, and it usually involves Mana Zane. We don't want her to be so tied to that exact option, so she's going to get a bit of a spell damage buff here. She's one of those champions that right now just does not see much play. Vayne is like, has fallen off pretty hard, so she's not that great.
Holy,
and in addition,
75
she
mana.
was somebody who usually played double Ginsus. She's one of the biggest people who kind of got hit with the double Ginsus. Now, hopefully she can make up some of that with maybe an item like Kraken or just in general, but we're going to give her back some of that starting mana she lost previous patches, so she'll be able to cast more often and do some of the more of that true damage. Again, light swings. My guess is Vayne actually might need a little more, but we also didn't want to go too crazy with like the Anima Squad openers here, so we had to be careful. Veigar, this is an interesting one. Veigar's always had very weird scaling. If you notice, most of our champions, when their spell scales, it goes up 50%. If you followed our normal frameworks, 1-star Veigar should do 320, and 2-star should do 480. That would be our normal framework. But the problem is, because Veigar has so much of his kit built into the true damage that he does, we have to kind of account for that. And so he ends up getting to do a little bit less damage at each star level. That being said, Veigar is okay when you get him in the exact right spot, but he's not really like an awesome star. He's a little too hard to play for what we want him to be. So we are going to give him some of that damage back at 2 and 3-star. So this will make Vhagar a little bit more playable. And then
actually
finally,
agree with that,
Rengar.
yeah.
You know, Rengar was a beast in those first couple patches. Got a couple subsequent nerfs. Has kind of been struggling. Even when his like second patch heyday, it was like more of a Jinx comp than a Rengar comp. That being said, we're going light here.
It's true.
We don't need to give him a bunch of healing back or anything like that. So he's just going to get 2 AD. So very light buff. And again, we're hoping that like Graves plus Rengar together might make some executioner openers a little bit more playable. So
Cut Purse is back on the menu. Actually, wait, you can't get Cut Purse on 2-1 anymore. But yeah, these are units that needed buffs. I think they're correct. I don't know if LeBlanc necessarily needs a buff that much. She's actually pretty good in the 5 Cypher reroll if you have an opportunity to play 5 Cypher LeBlanc. But I mean, I don't hate it. She's just, like, because it's one of those things. It's one of those things where actually buffing LeBlanc might actually be a nerf, because now LeBlanc might actually act like if you accidentally slam Madame too strong, she just kills things now. So it's one of those things where buffing LeBlanc might actually grief you more than you think. So just be careful about putting items with it. She's bad with that Mana Zane. It's true. It's more like the performance delta on Mana Zane without is so huge. But you're not wrong. LeBlanc, it's not like LeBlanc reroll is like particularly amazing without Mana Zane. And I guess they want to just make that more appealing. It's just funny.
all right, 4 and 5 cost. Not a lot of changes here. Cho'Gath is only getting nerfed at 3-star. He is the best 3-star 4 cost.
Yes.
The dirty secret, by the way, if you dig into the stats, is that he's actually outperforming Samira 3-star.
Yep.
Which isn't great. He's kind of really freaking good. So we are nerfing him slightly. It is fun when he's good, but he's a little too good. Leona, kind of been the cornerstone of a lot of comps here. And again, we talk about Anima Squad. We talk about Vanguard Marksman. Leona's just kind of carrying a lot of weight by herself. So we went with like the lightest nerf possible we could. We like her spell. We like that she's really, really tanky. Just increase that window of vulnerability ever so slightly. So Ziggs. Ziggs is getting not buffed, but I think, as Frodan would say, there's a potential green sentence here. You'll see some of that in the bugs later. But basically, have you ever had that experience where you throw a Ziggs bomb?
Yes.
And then it bounces, and then it keeps bouncing, and then keeps bouncing, and you're like, what the heck's going on?
Yes.
And then it finally goes off, and you're like, what? I've even had a situation where I had the Ziggs bomb was still bouncing, and he went to throw another bomb. It's like, it's a little much. So we did some work in here, and we're going to kind of clean up Ziggs. You'll see it more in the bug fixes as well. But overall, Ziggs should feel snappier. His spell should feel like it hits when it's supposed to and hits the number of targets it should. We're not increasing his numbers at all, not increasing his mana cost. He'll still do about the same amount of damage. He'll just avoid some really crappy situations. The intention is this should just feel better, but not actually be a power increase. But you never know with these things. There have been times where we changed an animation speed and all of a sudden the champ's OP. I don't think that's the case here, but just calling it out as a slight warning. 5 costs, Aurora. Aurora 2-star was underperforming just a little bit. I know that's crazy because right now, when we prepared this patch, this was true. We've seen a bit of a shift, especially because like Aurora caps out the Dynamo comps, the Morgana Bastion and things like that. But even in those comps, usually you can get away with Morgana 1 because Morgana 1's kind of doing everything she needs to do. It wasn't really capping around Aurora 2, and it wasn't making enough of a difference. So we went with a very slight buff here because, again, the way Aurora's spell is she hits everybody for this amount and then splits another much larger amount. So that larger amount isn't being buffed at all. It's only this initial damage. So she should be able to do a bit more at Aurora 2, and you should feel better about hitting a 2-star 5 cost because they're supposed to be good. So
sure, cool. Makes sense.
All right, that's it for champ.
Okay, so in terms of champions, I mean, the Ziggs, this is a big change in my opinion, because that's sort of why, like, this is actually, I think, almost like one of the biggest reasons why Street Demon feels so bad is because it feels like your duo carry is Ziggs or like a Jinx holding your Ziggs items, or like, you know what I mean? It just feels like you don't do enough, and Brand can't really solo carry for that long. And Ziggs is just super unreliable. How many times have people hit Ziggs 2, Brand 2, and then felt like it was a complete waste of gold? It was largely because of the stuff like that bug, where he's not reliable. So it has potential big waves of impact. This has potential to be a pretty impactful buff. It also could make one of those things that caps Vhagar really high as well, just making Vhagar better, making Ziggs better. It's one thing that makes strategists, like maybe like it makes strategists in general a little bit stronger. Who knows? Maybe it's an entirely new comp that spawns. In the very beginning of the set, people were actually just playing strategist Ziggs. That was actually a comp that people play. We just straight up disabled it because on TFT Academy because there's no one that plays anymore. But it was this comp. It's like people just played strategist and played Ziggs. This might make a comeback now if Ziggs stops being bad. But this was like very good on PB. So maybe it's something like this now. I mean, Yumi's better now as well. You just play strategist and then you just build your front line. So we'll see. Aurora 2 buff, I think it's actually I think it's good heads up call. I think Aurora 2 definitely didn't feel nearly as impactful to worth itemizing at times. I definitely felt that. So I think that makes sense. Leona getting nerfed. It's actually interesting because if you look at the stats surrounding Leona, it actually looks completely fine. It's like one of those things where you look at stuff like this competitive data for EU. This is the EU data, and then this is the NA data. And it's like none of it's like particularly out of line. If anything, it kind of shows that like nerfing this might make them like a lot weaker. And the thing about this Leona is that like she is the team. Like Warmogs, Stoneplate, like Bramble, Declaw, and Leona, and then that's it for your front line. Everybody else is just like trying to stall for Leona. So this is potentially a big deal. I know it's 10 mana, so it feels like that small window. But like the thing is, when Leona casts, she doesn't take damage like at all. So it is a pretty small but potentially huge impact. So yeah, I think I'm actually like worried about this. Just like it might be the tipping point where like some of these comps are gonna feel really bad playing around Leona now. But it's 10 mana, so and she's a frontliner, so she might take more abuse. Maybe it just means that you have to actually build Leona correctly instead of like. You can get away with like a Sunfire and 2 tank items. Maybe with the change to things like Indomitable, right? It could be one of those things too that's actually very good foresight. It's possible that Leona is more broken because we have stuff like Spirit Visage now, which is more selfish instead of Redemption. And maybe we're playing Indomitable. That, maybe that ends up making Leona way too good. So it could be good foresight.
All right, that's it for champions. Like I said, not a lot. Augments. Not a lot in the augment space. 1,000 IQ or 10,000 IQ. Our buff worked. This augment's very good.
Yeah, it's insane,
good.
Actually.
So gold rewards going from 8 to 4. Yeah. Board of directors. This has been another augment that's been really, really good. Things like Morgana, Vex, etc.
Man, I'm getting more.
A little too good. So we're going to lower the base stat increase from 75 to 60. Remember, it gets 10% per stage, so it does keep going up. But overall, little nerfed here. Category 5 removed because there's no hurricane.
Yep, makes sense.
Anger issues removed because it's not really exciting anymore with the way Ginsu's worked before, and it was already a black market augment anyway. So anger issues also gone. Lifelong learning. This is another black market augment that's been a little below, slight buff. Shock treatment. Static shiv's not a core item anymore. Removed.
Oh man.
Again, another black market augment gone. Unstable evolution. Very slight buff here. And then wise spending. This one's interesting. I'll be honest with you. Wise Spending 2 patches ago was a very, very good augment, and you would get 2 XP per 1 reroll. We nerfed it to 3 XP per 2 rerolls, so essentially we went from 2 to 1.5 XP per reroll. It became a dumpster tier augment, like really, really bad. And we debated all the different things we could do. It being like 7 XP per 3 rolls or so, like. Trying to get it to be a little bit better, but we really didn't like any of that. So we're going to try this version. So now it's XP per 2 rerolls, 4. So it's back to basically 2 XP per reroll.
Same value, but you have to spend more.
So if logic follows, it should be just as strong as it was before. This should be a very powerful augment. We want to confirm that to be 100% to see if that's the case, or if this like having to reroll twice to get the XP actually hurts it. And then we'll go from there. Now, keep in mind, it's a black market augment anyway, so worst case scenario, next patch we disable it. But just calling it out here that, like, the last nerf had a massive impact on this, and this is kind of undoing it almost, so be aware that wise spending should be pretty good So, and then bug fixes.
Mort's right. Like, it should theoretically be really good, and it's be one of those things where the better you are managing your econ, the better this augment is for Y spending. So Y spending might be back to being very good. Although it is particularly powerful that you can control it at a more granular level. Like two EXP per one roll is better than 4 per 2, but the value of it is still the same. So if you're managing your resources correctly, it should still functionally be the same thing. Santos, thank you. I actually am surprised that augments aren't touched more. What this tells me is that their numbers are looking okay, because I have like the impression that certain augments are like pretty bad. I can't pick some off the top of my head. But there's like a lot of them where I'm like, is this augment actually like good? And I'm like, well, Riot's never like buffed or nerfed them. I'm trying to think. I'm scrolling down I'm scrolling down the list to see if I can see any of them. If anything just jumps out to me. But there's always like, I'm like looking at this, I'm like, the Riot's never buffed this or nerfed this. So is the augment data okay? Because I feel like I feel like once per game I'm coming across an augment, I'm like, yeah, this augment sucks. But they're like not buffing some of them. Epoch? No, Epoch should be fine. It's an econ augment. I'm trying to think about it right now. I'm going through the list of like all the augments. But I guess I'm struggling to bring up an answer off the top of my head. Transference. Wait, this is an augment? When amp champions die, the nearest amp gets 1 amp until the end of combat. Holy shit! Thank God. that augment sounds insane. Yeah, I guess maybe an easy example would be the circlets, but they did change that recently, so I've not seen that. I don't think that's a real augment. Either way, I can't really pick them off the top of my head, so I guess I'm a fraud. So never mind. But I will say one thing: when they remove so many black market augments from the pool, that just means that it's more consistent hitting certain ones. So it could be one of those things where if you need to find a specific black market augment and they just keep removing them, they thin the pool, maybe you can hit scope weapons more reliably. Who knows? Also, yeah, I don't know if you guys had a chance to play Titan. I played this one time and I almost 100 the lobby. It was so crazy when I actually played this 10,000 IQ augment on 3-2. It is busted. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, what the heck? I like won the game with like 92 HP or something like that. Unbelievable augment.
Ziggs bomb. So this is the thing I was talking about with Ziggs. Will now only bounce to a new location if it would hit 0 targets. When it does bounce, it will now bounce on top of the closest enemy instead of to a hex within Ziggs' attack range. So again, this is basically just making it so it only bounces if
Emily said it was
bad
bad
completely, and then getting it there quick. We also fixed a bug where Ziggs' bomb could fizzle if he died before it exploded. We also fixed a bug where Ziggs' bomb double damage clause would come into effect based on the number of targets in his plus shape when the missile was thrown rather than when it was exploded.
What the heck?
Overall, a bit of a slight rework here, but again, the goal here is power neutral, snappier, and better. That was what a lot of our bug fixing time went towards. And then BRB, AFK, and delayed start are now all exclusive from each other. That caused some issues. So
you could get AFK and delayed start with double silver. It was like unbelievable. So some of these combos are crazy. But yeah, that is funny. Man, he said like green sentence, dude. This is a green novel. Unbelievable. That is a lot of changes. There's a lot of bug fixes, dude. What was going on in the back end with Ziggs?
What we're seeing is a lot of versatility. We don't think there are comps that are going out of line. If anything, what we're seeing is like, as some more reroll comps have become playable, there are people that are sort of like, they get extra frustrated when reroll comps are playable. And trust me, if they were out of line, we would nerf them. But right now, that's just not what we're seeing. And so no changes to anything like that.
Okay.
Now, one other call out here before I wrap this up is that if you're somebody who likes Remix Rumble and you're like, are there any Remix Rumble changes? The answer is yes. Actually, the team who works on our set revivals have got a bunch of patch changes ready. I didn't feel like it would be appropriate to go through them as that team worked on them. I don't have full context on them. They'll be in the patch notes, but just let it be known that we have just as many people working on these set revivals so that you guys enjoy them and have fun with them. And so there are buffs and nerfs. So shout out to the team that really did that. And so if you're having fun, just let it be known you're getting some changes as well, so that the set revival meta can be as good as possible. So there you go. That's it for the patch
Mort's
rundown.
wiping his hands.
One last thing I wanted to note for anyone who watches this. I mentioned previously that I was taking a step back from extra stuff. I did for about 3 weeks. It gave me some time to reflect and think about my approach and the way I was doing things. And what I did is I did kind of a reevaluation of like what things I really, really liked about streaming and doing all the extra stuff and what things I didn't. And I'm going to be doing a big focus to cut out the things that I didn't enjoy, and I'm just not going to do those anymore. So this is be interacting on things like Twitter and Reddit. I'm going to be more focused on like the streaming, as well as like my Discord will have some stuff. You'll see like a new fun morning podcast thing I do for myself that I really, really like. It's,
More
again, mostly just for
podcasts.
me because I enjoy it. So if you want to interact with me there, as well as I'm going to be streaming every weekend. But if I feel like taking time off, I just will. I'll take a breather or change my focus. Just really trying to take a healthier approach with the goal of, when I said I was taking a step back, I got a lot of support, frankly, more than I deserve. And I just want to make sure that to all the people who do support me, you guys are the ones that get my attention, that you guys are the ones that get the focus and the things we're going to talk about and keeping TFT great and entertainment. So yeah, cool. Don't want to dive on that too much here, but just wanted to let that be known. I know this video gets more views, so if you're curious what's happening, that's what's happening. So yeah. All right, cool. That's going to do it for me. Hope you guys enjoy. Patch will be out on, I believe, Wednesday.
Yep.
It's there's a holiday in the US, so it could be Thursday, but all the schedule stuff says Wednesday. So, but just be warned, if it's not on Wednesday and it ends up being Thursday, that's why. But schedule still says Wednesday. I'll let you know if that's not the case. So, cool. All right, that's going to do it for me. Hope you guys enjoy. Patches, new items, good stuff as we build towards the next set. And yeah,
That's right.
cool.
Set 14 is almost over, you guys.
That's gonna do it for me.
That's crazy.
Until next time, take it easy.
All right. So overall, this patch, I'm not exactly sure what to think of it because I think items are the biggest changes, and I understand that he says that they hope they have a small impact. I just don't think that's going to be the case, just because of how fundamental it is. Not that, like, you know, I just think they're egregiously wrong or anything like that. It's just, I just think it's impossible for that to happen because it just changes the way you play the game. Like, if, let's just say theoretically, Void Staff is just so OP and you know, Spear Visage becomes really good. Then all of a sudden, Tears again, now is like it becomes the most important item. Change the way you approach things. Changes the way comps are balanced. Changes the way you pick augments and so on and so forth. It just has a ripple effect on a lot of things. That being said, I will say that there's a couple of omissions from this patch that I think a lot of people are going to be pointing at. I think the first is that like Morgana Bastion looks really, really good, both in the stats on live, both in tournaments. Day 2 it looked worse. In EU it doesn't look that impressive, but NA it did. Maybe it's just a sample size issue, but it could be one of those things where Morgana surfaced really late in the patch, and I don't even know if they would be diagnosing the correct problems by rushing out a change. I do think that comp is like really strong. You heard it from T-Lies yesterday, and I'm starting to agree with it. With that, he thinks that Morgana Bastion is like solo S tier. I think that's like the big omission from the patch. And I guess if they need to make it better by B patching because it's out of control, they will. But it is one of those comps that right now is doing really well on ladder. But outside of that, though, nothing really. Like, if you look at the tier list of how we look at TFT Academy, the meta is fairly balanced. And again, I'm saying like this is one of the best patches I think I've played in a year. I think this is better. I actually think that this is a better patch than any patch in Set 13, even though Set 13 was overall better balanced for the whole lifetime of it so far. And I think that like it clears Set 12. Set 12 was, let's not talk about that set. And I don't really have that many memories of Set 11 that was like super good in terms of like how the patch felt. So I would say that overall, like, it's been a good experience. It's probably the most fun I've had played. And I said at the beginning of the video, I think it like single-handedly redeemed the set for me because I was not having fun. But we'll see how this ends up shifting because, yeah, it's just a complete dice roll on what this patch is going to be like. We'll see.